How's it going, all you Minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for my overview of the Tom Strong Compendium from DC Comics. So let's go ahead and get this started. And welcome back, everybody. So what we have here is the latest compendium from DC Comics. This is the Tom Strong Compendium. And again, if you're not familiar with compendiums, at least the ones from DC, because I know the IDW Lock and Key compendium turned out to be an omnibus, but just in case, compendiums are soft covers, and they are the dimensions of a trade paperback. The page size is that of the page size of a single issue, a monthly, a floppy, whatever you call them. So they are the same dimensions as the trades. They are most of the time thicker, though, because they contain so many more issues than the trades do, but just to kind of give you an idea. And of course, they are smaller than your omnibus editions. And again, the omnis are of course in hardcover, where these are softcover. So let's keep talking about Tom Strong. So here are some familiar names, probably from most of you all. Alan Moore, of course, they tell you right there, from the writer of Watchmen and V for Vendetta, but yes, also The Killing Joke, also books like Lost Girls, also books like Top 10, Promethea, and Swamp Thing, just to name a few. Of course, Miracle Man. And I mentioned those books because this one is just so different than all of those books. Maybe a little bit like Top 10, but here's the cover. And Chris Sprouse, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Chris Sprouse. A lot of you probably are familiar with his work on Legion of Superheroes and Legionnaires. All right, so here's a cover by Alex Ross. You have the DC logo, which is really interesting because they decided to make this stuff from America's Best Comics in DC's continuity, or at least the DC logo, not the Black Label logo, which now I really don't know what the hell the Black Label logo is supposed to be. Here is the spine. I really like that spine. Tom Strong, Compendium, Alan Moore, Chris Sprouse, the DC logo. The back of the book showcasing Tom Strong and Timmy Turbo and a couple of his friends back there. They're all about to get in trouble. And then the ISBN down here. And the price of this book is $59.99. Now, I usually wait to talk about the build of the book a little bit later, but I'm sure you can probably tell this is probably, and I'll just tell you, this is my flimsiest compendium that I've gotten, and it's having the hardest time. I know it's soft covers, right? They're not supposed to stand up. Nobody puts them up like this except when you're making a video, but this damn thing just keeps falling over on me. Now, of course, this could just be my copy, right? Maybe this particular copy sat around in a warehouse and it got all kinds of humidity, and now the pages are all wavy and the book itself is wavy. I didn't have any issues reading it, though. So, again, because it's a soft cover, there is no eye. It's just glued binding, so the pages are just on that soft spine right there of the book. No crease, as you can tell, probably. So, that's, what really matters to me. I don't know, maybe some time after putting it in between two thick books, it could fix itself. Yeah, but for some reason, this is the flimsiest compendium I've gotten. Top 10 I thought was made great. The Sandman Mystery Theater was great. This one here, just, I don't know. It can't be the page count, right? Because some of those books are super thick compared to this one. Just to kind of give you an idea of the thickness of Milestone 2 compared to Tom Strong. But like I was saying, nobody stores their books like this, their soft covers like this. It would be like having a trade paperback just stand there the entire time while you're making a video, and that's near impossible, believe me. But we're going to open this up and talk about the premise of the book, show off the artwork, and yeah, talk about why I said this is so different than some of the other stuff that Alan Moore has written. Alright, so let's go ahead and open the book up. You have this image by Chris Sprouse, the co-creator of Tom Strong there, and more images from him. Over here are the credits, the writers, the artists. I love the fact that the inkers and the pencilers are together. The colorist, Todd Klein, doing the entire lettering here, and then Alex Ross doing this particular cover, and the cover to issue number 1. Tom Strong was created by Alan Moore and Chris Sprouse. Here's your table of contents where you're going to find each of these issues, kicking off with Tom Strong number 1 from June of 1999 to Tom Strong number 36 that came out in May of 2006, so 7 years later. And that's all you're going to find in here are issues 1 through 36 of Tom Strong. So the miniseries, all the other appearances he had with the Terrifics and all that, that is not collected in here. Now, this book has 952 pages, and as I mentioned, retails for $59.99. So we kick it off with this very meta issue. By the way, the variants are sometimes on the opposite page of the standard cover. So this is a very meta issue because Timmy is about to go on a journey. This is Timmy Turbo, the kid in the back, and he got his Tom Strong comic, and that's how you find out who Tom Strong is. Now, at first, you think, okay, this kid is just reading about the superhero. He lives in this city named Millennium City, and he's reading about this particular character named Tom Strong. And I said superhero, and that's the wrong word to use for this character because he is not like that at all. So here we meet the characters of Sinclair and Susan Strong in 1899, the West Indies, where they are getting taken by this gentleman right here named Thomas to this island. Thomas doesn't make the trip, unfortunately, so he passes away. And on this island, Sinclair, who's kind of a little bit of a scientist, not a good father, I can guarantee you that, creates this character right here, this robot. This is a steam-powered robot named Newman. So he's kind of like their servant, and he helps them along the way. Now, they're not alone on this island. Later on, they end up having a kid, and of course, they name him Thomas. And it's cool because you keep going back to this, to Timmy, and the train is about to be attacked here, and by this rail burglar right there. And you notice that, wait a minute, Tom Strong is there to help out the train and the people inside the train. Meanwhile, Timmy's just finding out the origin of Tom Strong. So this is what I mean by he's not a really good father. What ends up happening is that Sinclair, Tom's father, puts him inside of a high-gravity chamber, and he gives him a bunch of education. Newman goes in there. They don't have any physical contact with their child. As a matter of fact, Susan's like, I want to touch skin to skin with my child. And he's like, yeah, when he gets to be about 11, we can do that. But right now, not really. Now, something to keep in mind are the years. This is 1903. So that's something very important. Now, in 1908, there's a huge earthquake that kills both his mom and dad. And Tom comes out of the chamber and ends up living with the people here on this island. So this is Atabar Teru. And in Atabar Teru, he makes friends with these people. And actually, that's where his lady comes from. And again, we keep going back to Timmy Turbo here, reading these stories, and he's crying. He's like, oh, that poor kid just lost his parents. Meanwhile, there's action going outside. So that's what the first issue is. It's his origin. It tells you everything you need to know about Tom Strong, why he's aging slowly. And you find out because there's a particular fruit that he eats that lets him age slower. But not just him, also his lady right here. This is Dalua, and who will become his wife later on. And of course, they have a daughter, and together they go on adventures. And as we see here in 1999, when this book came out, we see him with his daughter right here. This is Tesla and Dalua. And of course, they still have Newman with them. But they have another person, this guy right here. This very well-educated ape named King Solomon. Now, there are other characters that will show up through here, and Timmy does play a big part later on. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on the back cover. But that's the first issue. Holy socks. I don't know how many times I've said that today with my kids, and they're like, what are you talking about? So now that you have the origin of Tom Strong, it's time to get into his adventures. And what the adventures hold are just different, almost like episodic type of stories. I called him a superhero earlier on, and that is not right. This is more of a love letter to the pulp heroes of the Golden Age. So characters like Flash Gordon, characters like Tarzan, characters like Doc Savage. It's that kind of story in here. He's a scientist / adventurer. Those are the kind of stories you're going to find in here. Like issue number 2 is this character named the Modular Man, who has pretty much been downloaded by a bunch of nerds and ends up returning to Millennium City because he's been reactivated. The next one's about a Aztec building that is pretty much just arose out of nowhere in Millennium City, which is where Tom Strong and his family lives. And they keep going back and forth between the different times. Like, you'll get a little bit of a flashback, and then you'll go back to the 1999 timelines. Chris Sprouse does most of the artwork, but then you have like some flashbacks done by sometimes the cover artist. For example, that was definitely Arthur Adams. So in this particular issue, there's an untold tale of Tom Strong in Germany. So this is where we meet the character of Ingrid Weiss and her Nazi soldiers, and they're trying to attack Tom Strong in 1999. So he has this flashback of her, and this is drawn by the phenomenal Arthur Adams. And I love the flashbacks are sometimes done by like I said, the cover artists. Like Jerry Ordway does some. Dave Gibbons does an Untold Tale through here. So I will say that even though he's a science type of character, he does his fist do a lot of the talking. I can say that much about this story. Now, what kind of stories are you going to find in here? Hey, there's Timmy Turbo. I was just talking about how you'll be seeing him from time to time. And that's because Timmy Turbo is at the Strongman of America membership. And that's how he got that How Tom Strong Got Started issue. So this is where he ends up going. And like the Strongman Society or the Strongman of America is just this, kind of gives you an idea of how much of a popular following the character of Tom Strong has in this world. So each issue, even though feels like it's episodic, there are a couple of arcs in here that continue, and then sometimes villains from the past come back to his present, and villains that he thought were dead, such as one of his biggest arch nemesis, the science villain Paul Savine. This is an alternate world, so there are multiverses in Alan Moore's stories. And for example, this is a world where there are animals instead of people, anthropomorphic animals. And yes, even this guy, Savine, makes it into that particular world. So this is probably one of the most lighthearted Alan Moore stories I've read. It's not funny, or, I mean, it is. It's quirky at times. But definitely you get a sense of adventures. But it's not as funny like as Top 10. Top 10 literally made me laugh. This is more like, holy crap, I can't believe I'm going to say this, especially with the popularity of the Fast and the Furious movies, but it's about family. That's exactly what Tom Strong is. Like, it's not heavy on the texture, and the stories feel a little brief, but I don't know, sometimes you need that. I will say, the biggest thing that I think, for me at least, this is a Howard Chaykin story right here, is that the villains are very one-dimensional. Like, it's not until, honestly, other writers come in and start writing stories. So, while this is mainly Alan Moore and Chris Sprouse, I mentioned that Chris Sprouse, from time to time, like, backup stories are done by Jerry Ordway and a couple of other artists. Alan Moore does end up leaving the book. And he ends up leaving the book after this particular storyline. Here, let me get to it. And that's the Tom Stone storyline. So remember when I said there are multiple Earths? Well, this is a particular Earth where instead of Tom Strong, it's Tom Stone. Now, it's after this particular story arc with issue number 22 that he ends up leaving the book. So issue number 22 is his last one. He does come back for the final issue, but by issue 23, we do have some new writers. And he does leave it in good hands. Like, it still has that feel. And it does help that Chris Sprouse is actually co-plotting some of the stories from time to time. And, of course, he stays on artwork. But you have Peter Hogan writing some of the stories. And you have Jeff Johns coming in and writing some of the stories. Ed Brubaker writes some of these particular stories. Brian K. Vaughan. And maybe that's why it took so long between 1999 and 2006 for these particular stories to come out. There's a story in here by Michael Moorcock, too, which I had no idea that he wrote anything outside of his own universe. There's the Joe Casey story in here. And then art, right? Like I mentioned, the artwork. It's not always Chris Sprouse. Pasquale Ferry does some of the artwork in here. Ben Oliver, Paul Gulacci, Jerry Ordway, as I mentioned, and Duncan Fegredo doing some of the artwork, just to name a few of the artists. And he does come back with the final issue. But with the final issue, it gets a little bit confusing because it's a okay, I'll just go ahead and tell you. I'm not going to show you exactly what happens, but Alan Moore comes back. He's reunited with Chris Sprouse, but it's part of a crossover with Promethea. So when Promethea was ending, that's kind of how I found out about Tom Strong, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. It's like this huge, horrible apocalyptic thing happening, and this issue, or that, what's happening in Promethea, in Tom Strong, it's all told through his perspective. So there are characters that appear from here, from Top 10, and Promethea. I don't know what else there was another comic I cannot remember. Um, anyway, that is all collected in here. Now, all the way in the back, there's not very much. There's this article about Tom Strong and Millennium City. Here's some character designs for characters and some bio information on just Alan Moore and Chris Sprouse. Now, I was not reading comics during this time that this book came out. When ABC started the American Best Comics, or America Best Comics, I was taking a leave of absence from comic books. I had stopped with Onslaught, and I didn't come back until really New X-Men, but really what established my return was Astonishing X-Men. So I missed out on all this era of Alan Moore. This, Promethea, oh my gosh, his run on Supreme I missed out on, and League. Like, I missed out on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So it wasn't until years later, when I came back to comics around 2002, that I started getting the collections, like the trade paperbacks. Now, Tom Strong had two. There was a deluxe edition volume 1 and a deluxe edition volume 2. I didn't pick those up. I picked up the trades because I didn't know anything about the character outside of the whole Promethea thing, and nobody was really talking about Tom Strong. So when I read it for the first time through a series of trades, I think there were a total of, I want to say 6 trades, if I'm not mistaken, to collect all 36 issues. I was just taken back by how in the hell is this the same guy that wrote stories like Miracle Man, or stories like Lost Girls or Swamp Thing, because they're so different. Like, if you had told me this was another writer, this was somebody new, I've been like, okay, cool. This reads like a love letter to the Golden Age pulp heroes. I would not have guessed this was Alan Moore. And when I reread, I'll be honest, I just reread like the first 10 issues of this. It's a fun story. And it's been a long time since I've read them, since they came out in trade years, or whenever I got the trades in the early aughts. But it, to this day, still feels like, no, this is not Alan Moore. I don't know who the hell this guy is, but he's not Alan Moore. Because it just reads so different. Now, I said this was lighthearted, and don't get me wrong, it is compared to a bunch of his stories, but there's still a couple of dark elements in here, like some of the things that end up happening to some of the multiverse characters. Yes, we have, I'm sure you saw the cover that I was flipping through here. It has his own kind of crisis, but with a little bit of a spin, with an Alan Moore little bit of a spin. But yeah, this is definitely a series that not a lot of people talk about, and it could be because I think, and I could be wrong, I don't know, but I remember when I was talking about this in forums, people were like, ugh, that is horrible. That is the worst thing Alan Moore ever wrote. You know, I was like, or things like, I was disappointed by that book because when you say Alan Moore, we have a level of expectations, and that book didn't even deliver anything close to what Alan Moore should be writing. Um, I had no idea people hated this book. And I can see, some of the things why, especially when I'm rereading it, because like I mentioned a little bit earlier, yes, there's very little texture in here. The villains are one-dimensional, the stories are short and brief. He doesn't really science that much until a little bit later. He gets into the science aspect of things. He just punches his way out of situations. So I can see why some people didn't. I don't think it's his worst thing. I don't even know what I would say his worst book is. But yeah, this is a different side of Alan Moore that you don't see very often. I always tell people, read it for yourself. Don't judge it based on what everybody else is telling you, because there are things that you're going to enjoy, and then of course it goes the other way around too. Other people tell you, hey, this is the greatest thing ever, Batman Year 2, go and check it out. You read it and you're like, well, that was trash. So it happens, right? But I always tell people, judge it for yourself, and this is definitely in that case. Of course, it's a $60 book, but it's everything. It's the main series. Like, it doesn't have the spin-offs, and it doesn't have the whole Robots of Doom or the Planet of Peril or the Tom Strong's Terrific Tales. Those are not collected in here. But for the most part, it does feature the stuff that, you know, the main series. I would love to see that stuff collected one day too. Maybe an omnibus, you know, and you throw in the Terrifics. That'd be one big ass omnibus though. But yeah, that's it. You know, the covers are intact. Here, let me show you again. Right here, you do have page numbers, which comes in handy, huh? I like to point that out because you have a table of contents. Sometimes, you know, both companies, DC and Marvel, give us a table of contents and we have no pages to follow. So it's happened. So it is nice that it's not textless. You actually know what issue you're on. And sometimes the variant cover is on the opposite side. So that's all I will say about Tom Strong. I would love to know your thoughts, though, so leave them down below. As for me, that, as they say, is... Oh, and also, let me know if your copy is as flimsy as mine. I don't know why it feels different than all the other compendiums. Hope it's just my copy. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this book, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content and page count and build of this compendium. Let me know in the comments down below if you are picking this up, if you own the deluxe editions and you're hoping for more of the deluxe editions. Who knows, maybe one day. If you're hoping that DC will collect this in some kind of omnibus or absolute format one day, or if you're happy with the compendium. At least it's out, and yeah, people can now read it for the first time. So if you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button. Oh yeah, and one more thing. What other compendiums would you like to see collected? I know in the comment section, I know people have suggested things like Sandman or Preacher to be collected in compendium. But yeah, I would love to know what you would like to see collected in compendium format. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.